Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Reds Rundown, hosted by two lifelong Reds fans and journalists. I'm Rob, and he's Joe, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Joe, how's your April Fool's Day starting out? We are recording this on April 1st. This is not a joke, though, to be clear. So, this is a serious show.
I'm pretty sure that David Bell is pulling some jokes. I'm pretty mad. We're 2-1. We're lucky to be 2-1. I'm excited to get into it because I am mad about a lot.
Joe is heated up. He is on fire for his passion for the Reds and the weird decision making. We were texting about it over the weekend a little bit as well, and we're doing our best to not talk too much about the Red stuff before we get on this show so that we won't ruin anything for you guys, but we'll make sure to kind of do our best to do that because it'll be interesting to see what we end up thinking. But we're going to start the day, as always, with our question of the day, and I want to know, who was your opening series MVP? I will give mine very quickly. I'm not going to pick Nick Martini, even though I thought he was absolutely awesome. I'm actually going to go with William Benson, as I call him, with my dad. I thought he had a really, really solid series. He was this close to stealing away a home run. Sorry, this close. As well, that probably would have kept them in the game. I think he played some solid defense. I think he had some really clutch hitting that people weren't talking about. I think he had some really solid at-bats. I know everybody's talking about the home run, but I'm talking about even his doubles, his singles. Like, he had a great game 3, a really solid game 1, and was fine in game 2 as well. So I want to give it to a guy who's playing every day, and I think Benson kind of earned that, to be honest. So, Joe, what about you?
And you just really hate Nick Martini.
I love Nick Martini.
No, dude needs. I mean, now he's holding off on drinking out of a shoe. It was Nick Martini hands.
Don't worry.
Nick Martini hands down. Just so many clutch hits. I think he became a star opening day, and then the pinch hit hit later. Later in the series, the story behind it is great. The fact that he was clutch. There's a chance that the Reds are 0-3 without Nick Martini right now. That's how crazy we are.
There's a chance. There is a chance. They were winning 8-2 in the first game, and I think that Martini was awesome. Obviously, that pinch hit double should have won us the game on Saturday, but we'll kind of dive into that as well. I wanted to tee it up. I just didn't want to give the obvious one. It was obvious. Nick Martini had an unbelievable series, and I will be drinking out of a shoe. Do not worry. We're gonna put that actually on a short. Okay, so that is planned for this week. It will be on a short. So if you haven't already subscribed, make sure that you subscribe to this channel if you are a Reds fan and you want to see me drink out of a shoe. As a reminder, the reason why we're doing this is because I said to a Redditor that there was no way that Nick Martini would make the opening day lineup, sans injuries. I'm still technically right, but because of my commitment to this show, and my commitment to you all, I'm still going to drink out of a shoe because he still made it regardless of suspensions and injuries. The man is in there, and honestly, thank God he was, because otherwise we probably would be that first game would have been closer, and who knows how Alexis Diaz would have done on opening day in a 3-2 game without him. There's just a lot of good things that he did, obviously, in this first series. He had some really solid at-bats, too. Throughout the series, not even just I know he was first pitch hitting, but he drew a walk as well. That was pretty important in Sunday's game. So shout out to Nick Martini opening day. Reminded me a lot, honestly, of the Derek Dietrich, Joe. Very much of Derek Dietrich early on, which would be great. So would love a Derek Dietrich type season out of Nick Martini.
Yeah, I mean, and Derek Dietrich did fall off and did not have the greatest season overall, but you loved having him in the clubhouse. It seems like in a different way because he doesn't have the personality as Dietrich, but he is a guy that seems like he's a good locker room guy. And, Rob, I know there were some injuries and suspensions, but it seems like the Reds had planned to have him in opening day, at least from the start. Like,
really? I have not heard that.
Remember last week we talked, like, he wasn't even in the discussion for the last man on the roster. He was in with Bubba Thompson's the last man on the roster. So when you think there's two to three guys hurt right now, suspensions, like there's a chance he was on opening day roster. So I think they value having him in the clubhouse. I think they like having the left-handed bat off the bench, and it worked out for him. So I'm hoping he can keep it up. I don't think he's going to get a lot of at bats later on in the season when guys get healthy, but when he steps up and gets some key at bats, if he can be a good pinch hitter, DH when we need him, that's great.
Oh, he's going to be imperative to April specifically, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But we wanted to give Nick Martini his shout out because truly it was deserved. But opening day was good. Honestly, the Reds looked great. Frankie Montas was Dyson. I know he wasn't necessarily striking out a ton of people, but I really loved what Chris Welsh was talking about, where it was like he's trying to set the example for these young guys of you don't always have to go for strikeouts, right? They will come if you pitch well. You pitch, I mean, the weak contact, the Nationals couldn't get the ball out of the freaking infield basically against him. I mean, it was really impressive to see what he was, and I was personally really excited to see the way that he pitched, because if like that's going to be our number one for right now, potentially for the season at this point, right? Then I don't know if he's going to be an ace. He'll have bad games, I'm sure. But if that's the way he's going to pitch towards weak contact, not worry about the strikeouts, just go in and get my job done, I personally couldn't ask for more. I thought he looked excellent. I was watching every pitch. His velocity was great when he needed to. He was ramping it up 96, 97 still, which was awesome. But he was living in that 93, 94 range. His splitter looked absolutely nasty. I mean, I could talk all day about him, but Joe, I think it's worth pointing out as well that I think that's what we needed, because I think if we had a Hunter Green start in opening day, we would have been a little bit worried for the kind of, the rest of the series, to be honest with you. Another guy we'll discuss a little bit more in depth here shortly, but what were your thoughts there on Frankie going out there and getting the job done?
I mean, it's weird to say, but it reminded me of an Andrew Abbott start last year. It was more about the placement of pitches than anything else. I liked how there was a couple he left over the plate, and that's going to happen as you're a pitcher at every start. But for the most part, if he missed on the outside or inside. He was doing a really good job of finding those spots, and that's what made it tough for the Nationals to hit it. So a guy who formerly threw much harder is now lowering the velocity a little bit to have the placement. That's something that Hunter Green can take from this, and I think he has proven that, hey, maybe he's over these injuries. Now, I'm just going to caution everyone, it is the Nationals, and the Nationals do stink. Yes. Their lineup stinks. I know I said that last week. So very good start to the season. I'm excited to see what he can do in the upcoming games when we get to preview those as well.
Yeah, and let's give a quick shout out to poor Nick Senzel. That guy is the most unlucky guy I've ever met. He takes a bad ball literally right before the start of the game, takes a bad ball off his right thumb and breaks it. Crazy unlucky how that happens with that guy. Shout out former Red. That lineup wasn't great, although we made Jesse Winker look like he was with the Reds again. That was wild to me as well, but we'll move on here. The rest of the series, obviously the Reds win 8-2 in that first game, which was awesome. They go on, they lose sadly in game 2 on Saturday because of the bullpen. Offense was solid, another 6 runs. I mean, I think anytime you put up more than 5 runs, you should hope to win a game. So I think a pretty solid job offensively from the Reds, especially to rally, because there were different points where it really felt like they were kind of sputtering. But they put up 3 in the 5th, 2 more in the 8th, and you really felt like, all right, nothing's gone right for them. Their defense hasn't played well. Hunter Green was in and out of trouble the entire game. Nick Martini comes up with that huge pinch hit double in the 8th. And you're thinking, all right, they're somehow going to be 2-0. Alexis Diaz is going to come in, and the guy just couldn't find the plate. It was honestly really disappointing to watch. Really couldn't believe it. Well, then in game 3, obviously a pretty interesting game overall. The Reds come out on top thanks to a pair of home runs at the end of the game. It was a good start for Nick Martinez in his first game. He went 5 innings, 6 hits, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. He did give up the home run to CJ Abrams as well. He looks pretty solid, but it came down to the very end. Kyle Finnegan led Major League Baseball in saves blown last year. He got his first one on Saturday and Sunday. Jonathan India with an 11 pitch at bat finally does his signature double down the left field line. I feel like I've seen that hit, multiple times from him. Very next pitch, Will Benson comes up, hits a 2-run home run to tie it up. 2 pitches later, Christian Encarnacion Strand finally gets on the board, finally gets his first hit for the season, hitting an absolute nuke into left field. The Reds walk it off. Definitely not the series I think you and I were hoping for. But regardless, they were 2-1. That's what we wanted. I will admit I ended up amending my predictions on opening day on Thursday. I ended up predicting a 2-1 after our discussion. So, when there was a little more time, or a little less time, I should say, between the games, I did end up changing it up once I thought about it a little bit more. So, hey, you can't shake your head. We're doing this show on freaking Mondays and Sundays, and the games didn't even start till Thursday. So I didn't even know what the opening day lineup looked like. But,
crazy flip flopper, snip snap, man, snip snap.
But it was look. They very easily could have been 1-2 in this series or 3-0. They even it out. They go 1-2 opening day series. Like I'm happy enough. I didn't love the way that they did it. The defense looking bad, and Espinal like just randomly dropping a pop up on Saturday, or not even dropping, but just letting it fall in was really weird. I know he's new, so maybe it's just communication error there. I couldn't really tell. I was out watching the game, but Martinez was exactly what we needed him to be. Average starter, but probably a really solid bullpen guy. You could tell he was kind of getting fatigued there in the 4th inning. I was surprised, honestly, that they kept him out there in the 5th as long as they did. The team can hit. They're striking out a lot. And Hunter Greene may just end up being a number 3 guy, dude. I don't know. Which of these points do you want to tackle first?
All right, so I was actually going to start with Hunter Greene anyway. I think he's getting a lot of hate for the start. Like, it's the first start of the year. He's still young. He's mentioned that he's still figuring things out.
Yeah.
I think I've seen on Twitter people just absolutely hating him. Yeah, he had 4.2 innings pitched. He did give up 2 earned runs. He did get into some jams, but I think, he finishes with a 3.86 ERA, which, 1 start, but that's not a bad ERA to start with, it to be the best ERA of his career if he keeps that up for the whole season. I was very encouraged with how he pitched. I was encouraged by his slider. I was encouraged by how he placed different pitches. It is one of those things where you can look at the box score and maybe say, oh, he gave up 2 runs. He didn't even last 5 innings. That's stupid. But if you actually watched him pitch, I don't think it was that bad. Now, again, this is the Nationals lineup who does stink. Jesse Winker is batting 3rd for them. That is atrocious. This might be the worst lineup in baseball. Honestly, it's down there at least. And that's not great, but 7 Ks and 4.2 innings. I still think there's a big chance he'd be really good. I'm not settling on he's going to be a 3 pitcher, Rob. I know that's something you just questioned, but yeah. I think it's we can't jump off of this Hunter Greene after 1 start. I know it's the Nationals. I know it stinks. They stink, but that for me, that's just the thing is like, let's give him a little bit of time to warm up for the season. Let's see how he does. I think we didn't judge spring training for a lot of guys. I don't think we should judge guys off of 1 start so far this year. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll settle down and be fine.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there. I don't believe that that's the case either, to be clear. I was a little discouraged, though. The one thing that I don't like about Hunter Greene is I feel like he has a lot of kind of wasted pitches that just don't really have a point. And what I mean by that is he's getting into so many 2-2, 3-2 counts that, he's looking for that strikeout instead of doing what Montas was doing, which was, keeping the ball in a position to where, yeah, they may hit the ball, but you're going to get weak contact. And I know that's not really the kind of pitcher that he is yet, but I do want to see that develop for him. I want to see him be willing to throw some pitches in different areas. And yeah, he's got a long way to develop, guys. He's picked up 2 brand new pitches just over the offseason, got rid of the changeup, right? For the splitter, for the curveball. I do think that is going to take some time. It does worry me. I wish he would have just ended up picking up 1 and stuck with the changeup, honestly, just so that he's not trying to like kind of reinvent himself, this season, like completely almost. Cause like, I don't think people understand when you're adding 2 pitches out of the 4 that you have, you're basically reinventing yourself almost to a certain degree. And this will take time. We won't really, I think, see like the fruits of this labor for maybe 2 years, honestly, because it does take that kind of time to really nail down like 2 brand new pitches along with the kind of style that he has. So these are good steps that he's taking forward. He's going to be a high strikeout guy, high walk guy. I will say that I think his start looks elite if he just takes out 2 of those walks. Box score wise, however you want it to be. If he cuts those walks literally in half from 4-2, I think he ends up getting through the 5th inning, and I think everybody's like, holy crap, this guy is really freaking good, right? And so to say that he's a number 3 guy instead of an ace, I wanted to throw it in there. I don't personally believe it, but I think it's a discussion that people are starting to have. I think we need to just give him a little bit more leeway. He's still pretty young, honestly, so let's just give him a chance here, and we'll see what happens. He does worry me in his starts, though. I will say that. He has got to be a little bit more command and pitch efficient. If he can just, seriously, like 10 more strikes, or 5, 6 even. 6 more strikes a game. That can seriously change just how dramatic his stat lines look and how those games go for him. It is that much of a margin, or that small of a margin. I do think it's worth discussing as well a Benson Fraley battle once TJ Friedl gets back. They're both hitting the absolute snot out of the ball right now. I just want to bring up, it's going to be interesting to see what the Reds do with the lineup. I think Martini is the guy, obviously, who ends up seeing a lot less at bats. I think Fraley or Benson will end up kind of finding themselves into that DH role. So worth noting there. I don't know if you have any extra thoughts on that one, but something to be watching for, I think, over the next month or so while Friedel's wrist heals.
For that one, they'll just put one of them at DH, so I don't think it matters.
Yeah,
so, yeah. Like but I have more to go over for this game, Rob. I'm assuming you're going to get to it, but just in case you don't, I will throw in that I have a lot to say about this series still.
Okay, well, where do you want to go then? I'll let you hop in here.
David Bell gets an F for the first series of the year. Terrible lineups. I don't know what we're doing here. I mentioned last week that Jamer being in the 4 spot doesn't make sense to me because he's not a traditional power hitter. But then you put Espinal in the 5 spot in his start. And it's weird. And it's like, and then even the order of it, like the opening day roster, they did have their best 7 hitters, I think, batting the first 7, but it was a weird order, and he's playing like too much of the let's break up the lineup a little bit rather than having your best hitters hit at different spots. So that gets an F. We also go to the bullpen usage. Now, let's start with Diaz, right? Diaz blowing a save, right? He did not look good the whole inning. He got 1 strikeout to start the inning, or the second batter of the inning, and then you're thinking like, okay, this he gets settled down. But then he keeps on giving up runs, walking guys, gets the run in, and then they bring in Brent Suter. He gets a sac fly, which ends up, being the game-changing run, even though it's not his fault because he got the sac fly.
Yeah.
And he gets out of the inning. You could have taken him out sooner. We know Diaz struggled in spring training. Maybe he's just not warmed up for the season yet. Maybe he did lose something. Maybe he was taxed from last season, and that's really going to affect him. We had that. We had Buck Farmer, who I mentioned I didn't even want on the team. He's not very good. Rob, I'm going to try to be respectful of you because I know you wanted him on the team, but he stinks.
I did not want
I'm done
with
him.
Team. You're misrepresenting me. Mm-hmm. I did not want him. I said that he was going to make it because of the way that they structured his contract. I did not want him on the team.
You were very happy with how he 8 innings last year, and also you mentioned that his ERA wasn't a big factor. Well, it is a big factor because he sticks. So I'm sorry, Rob. I disagree with you on Buck Farmer, at least in that part. We did agree on different parts of like, hey, this, he's like the 8th person in the bullpen, the last person. He's not good anymore. That is I don't know. You can look at whether it's the GM, whether it's David Bell. Tony Santillan was the best pitcher in spring training, and he's not on the team. That could be Tony Santillan's spot. What are we doing? Like, this is stupid. So I had that issue with the bullpen usage. And then we know that this team does not have the defensive players playing the positions they were brought up to do, right? So we have Stu Fairchild lets one fall in the game. He started in center field. And Ellie got the closest to it because Ellie's a freak, and that's awesome. But Stu should have had that if he had a better read on the ball. And then later in the game, he catches the ball, and he doesn't even throw home on a play where Abrams tags up and scores. Now, Abrams is fast, but it was a shallow fly ball. It looks like he thought there was one out. I don't know what we're doing. This is very, very dumb. I don't understand it. There were some errors, like you said, with Espinal, which I guess it was an error, and then they took it off the board because he didn't even field it like you mentioned, Rob. It was just weird. So David Bell gets an F. Those players on defense really need to shape up. I would do the same thing as David Bell and playing them there, but they have to know the situation. There was also a point where we could have had a double play, I believe, to end an inning, where they were shifted so far to prevent a single where Ellie couldn't get to the ball, and he dove and couldn't get to it when we could have had a double play. So there are different things that I am furious about. This team should be 3-0. Being 22-1 is a stroke of luck and a testament to Nick Martini, Will Benson as your MVP, Rob, and even the clutch hitting of CES and Jonathan India with that crazy at bat that he had at the end of Game 3 to get the rally started. So I am absolutely. I went from saying 87 wins is my projection, even with all the injuries. Man, this is not a good sign that they're having this many issues, and that it starts from like David Bell, but also a roster construction where Tony Santillan's down there. The defense isn't good. The injuries already are there. If they have another injury, we've talked last week, Rob, how they're screwed. So that's my rant. I'm not very happy. I think David Bell deserves an F. They gave him that contract extension too soon. I mentioned that as well. I'm going to make one more point here, Rob, because I know I've been ranting for a little bit, but I think David Bell needs to trust his gut more. I think he needs to put it on himself. When he makes these decisions, the reasonings are always analytics. You know what? That's great. Hey, we did this because of analytics. We did this because of analytics. This is what it says when you go 3 times through a lineup. That he is deflecting blame from himself when he does that. It is the analytics fault. It is analytics. Step up and make your own decisions and put your team in the best position to win. There are things analytics can't describe, like, hey, maybe this guy's hot right now. That's a thing. Maybe this guy's having a bad week at home. Like maybe you shouldn't put him in. There are things that go bigger than that. So analytics are a good thing to try, but when all of your discussions are, analytics, this is why we do this. That's where you get a little bit into a situation where I don't think it's good for baseball. And I am, like I said, pretty pissed. And now you get into a position now where, these next 2 series against Phillies and Mets, who have some good players, even though the Mets started off pretty poorly. These are very, very important series, Rob. So there we go. I don't know. I said all I need to say there. There you go.
Well, if you can't tell, this will be a lot of the show in terms of the David Bell discussion. Joe has not been a big fan. I would say leans towards not full out hatred, but a very strong disdain for a lot of the decisions that are made by David Bell. And I will say that to your point, yeah, I mean, Buck Farmer was way worse than I thought. Like, to be honest with you, he was a solid innings eater guy. He actually had been really solid the last 2 years in some pretty big situations, but that's because his fastball was actually, mid 90s. Or on Sunday, I forget, Sunday, yeah, I think is when he pitched his first game. So I'll give David Bell credit for that. He's not the first guy out of the bullpen. He's generally, if he's only seen action for the first time in the 3rd game, then, they used Pagan twice, Suter twice before they even got to him. So I will say he's clearly at the bottom rung of the bullpen right now, and I think that that's probably where he belongs and may end up getting pushed out, which we'll talk about here in a minute too. But, like, the dude was throwing 90. You can't, like, Buck Farmer's known, like, that is what he's known. His fastball is what he's known for. Is he's got a solid 95, 94 mile an hour fastball. If your fastball's sitting 90, 91, like, you may not be able to tell it as like a casual observer, but that 2 to 3 miles an hour difference is major. I mean, massively different, especially for the type of pitcher that he is. I was listening to the game yesterday, and I think the Cowboys said specifically, like, they need to have a very strong, like, very big discussion about him right after that game, because that slider that he threw to get out of that inning was just horrible. I cannot believe the Nationals catcher Ruiz swung at that pitch. I mean, I almost hit him. It was a 3-2 pitch. Like, what are you swinging at that for, man? I mean, that's horrible plate discipline, which is kind of the thing that I wanted to talk about for this series. I just felt like the discipline from the team was bad all around. I felt like their hitting discipline at the plate, they were swinging at just a ton of terrible pitches. Strikeouts were bad. Obviously, you talked about it defensively. Not great, honestly. Stuart Fairchild's supposed to be a much better defender than that. That was just awful. Espinal, again, was, I think, not great either. And then the lineup. Like, even David Bell's lineup, I went and checked. Look, righty on righty is always going to have a little bit of a dip. And I know that Steer's I didn't realize this. Steer hit .313 against lefties last year. But he also hit .256 against righties with, obviously, triple the at-bats. So, look, Steer is obviously going to hit lefties a little bit better. That's what most righties do. But putting him 7th because he's a almost 260 hitter is embarrassing. Like, it was his first full season, and he still did that. And honestly, if we want to continue this rant a little bit, dude, Spencer Steer was probably the most consistent player the entire series. consistently getting good hits. His at-bats were great. Doesn't matter where he bats in the lineup. Doesn't matter where he plays the field. The guy's just getting the job done. And I just personally was really impressed with his start to the season. I felt like he had some really clutch hits. Weirdly enough, he got both of his like big hits in games against righties. He actually did not hit the lone lefty in the series, Corbin, who we also made look insanely good, even though I actually think he did not look very good on the mound. We let Patrick Corbin go, I think, like 5 innings, really didn't give up that much in terms of runs, and we were swinging at just a bunch of really bad pitches, and their whole thing this offseason was they were going to be better at the plate, they were going to walk more, and then on the mound, they were going to try to walk less. And so far, it has been the exact opposite. Now, I know we're only 3 games into the season. If we're going to give Hunter Green leeway, we got to give everybody else leeway, so that's fine. But I do think that it is worth mentioning that, like, I agree with you. I think, you know, we ended up being 2-1. I really think we probably should have lost game 3 and won game 2, but they ended up flipping the other way. Do you have any last thoughts? Because I do worry about the bullpen. Antone not being able to find the strike zone was just really bad. Diaz's velocity is down as well, like you said. He couldn't throw strikes. Truly, the 2 bright spots, and I guess you could give maybe even Pagan because his second outing was a lot better. Although he worries me, man. I'm going to be honest. That guy gives up a lot of fly balls. I can see why. He lives up in the zone with only like a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. It was pretty worrisome for me, but Brent Sooner looked awesome. Fernando Cruz actually looked really good as well. You're going to have those kinds of games. You need to find consistency. I will tell you right now, if Alexis Diaz ain't it, you better be ready to turn to Suter or Sims right now. That seems to be kind of the route they'll need to go. But it looks like you were looking something up, so I'm guessing it was the Stuart Fairchild defensive stats.
No.
Okay.
I'm kind of bopping around, making sure I have all my thoughts in order.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an average center fielder or an average outfielder who just doesn't play center, and Again, it's one of those things where if you're gonna have, and I would have done the same thing. We don't have a center fielder on the roster. I'm not starting Bubba Thompson or anything like that. It's not that. But if those guys are out there, you have to make sure they know the situations. You have to know the positioning, all that stuff, and maybe make sure they get some more reps in spring training at those positions, especially after Frieda went down. So that's something to note. Egg on my face too, Rob, for the bullpen stuff. I gave you a little criticism there. I didn't think Fernando Cruz was going to be good this year on the team at all. So look at that. He's actually pitching pretty well. I will say, this is organizational stuff needs to change. With, like I said, Tony Santillan was at David Bell's call, is it the GM's call? I don't know. He needs to be up here right now. He's the best in spring training. He's had good stuff in the past, but also like. This offseason, we talked about, hey, maybe give them a B for the offseason for everything. They have depth at a lot of places. Even though the bullpen hasn't worked at the back end, there's guys like Santillan in the minor leagues. There's guys who could come up and get back from injury, and Ian Jabot and Williamson, if you want to put him in the bullpen as well, or Martinez moving to the bullpen once Lodolo comes back. And even in all the depth we had in the field, which is now pretty much depleted because of the injuries and suspensions. Yeah. But I think we need to criticize the fact that we didn't go get something more experienced, right? Like, we could have gone out and gotten an ace. And Montas, great that he had a good start, and he was an ace, but we didn't know he was an ace when we signed him. We didn't pay him ace money for sure. So that's one of the things. We could have had an ace. We could have, gone out and gotten a star bullpen player, like a really good pitcher who maybe he starts off as the setup, but if Diaz struggles, then he becomes the closer type of thing, right? And because we know Lucas Sims can play a bunch of different roles in that bullpen depending on what we need. We could have gone out and gotten a star bat, but we just didn't. I get it. We don't want to give up any of our young guys too, but we're getting to the point now where we're 3 games into the season, and I think maybe you feel the same way, but I'll let you speak for yourself after this. If Diaz doesn't work out, if he's taxed from last year, if he just doesn't have it, if he's just not the same pitcher, whatever it is, we have to make a trade at the deadline for bullpen then.
Oh, for sure.
And the thing is then you could have gotten that done in the offseason by signing a guy, which you wouldn't have to give up a prospect for. You could have had a better start to the season, which is more important now. Rob, I know you're going to make a point later about how tough the May schedule is, especially the end of April to the end of May. Mm-hmm. These games matter. So if Diaz doesn't have it and we start sliding down below 500, and then we have to go on this rough schedule in May, that's where things change. So I don't know. I think it could be the season could be over at the end of May if they don't figure this out. I think they can figure it out. I think they probably will figure it out at least decently. But that's like the roster construction part where I have an issue with, because imagine if they would have gone out and got a really good closer, or an ace to the bullpen, or an ace to the rotation where you move Martinez to the bullpen and have another good pitcher there. Like, there's so many things they could have done. Again, that's just kind of my thinking going through this is it's not just David Bell's fault. I did have a lot of bad words for him. It's roster construction. And as you said, Rob, I do think that there is something to be said about plate discipline and just players who should have been more focused overall.
So I will rebuttal you just a tiny bit, because while I do agree with your point overall, because I think if the Reds are going to decide to go in, I realistically think it's going to sound bad. I think next year is probably the more they have to go for it year than this year, because I think they're still trying to figure a couple things out, because they are very deep at starting pitcher. I think getting Montas was good. I would have loved to have seen them. I mean, I think with Jordan Montgomery, like that deal, seeing that deal for just double basically what we got Montas for, I would have liked that. Right now, Frankie Montas was better for the majority of his career. Jordan Montgomery's come on very strong lately, right? But I want to give them a little bit of leeway just because I see what they're thinking, right? I mean, we still don't even have enough spots once Lodolo and Williamson are healthy. And again, I've said this, I think, a lot to you. If Williamson's your number 5 starter going forward, then you got a pretty good starting rotation. So I'm going to give them a slight bit there. The last one I will say is I did not expect. Now, they should have known if Alexis Diaz was this low velo, like 2 to 3 miles an hour slower than he normally is, they should have absolutely figured something out. To give them credit, though, they still did add, Pagan was a former closer. They expect that he could potentially do it. Lucas Sims, I think, has the best stuff right now in the bullpen with Diaz's arm not looking like it should. I think they assume maybe Lucas Sims, and he has closed for us when we've needed him to. I think they assume that. I will say this as well. You have Santillan, Ian Gibaut, and don't forget about Sam Moll. Sam Moll was really freaking good. And if Brent Suter is going to look this good, those are your 2 lefties. You don't even need Alex Young anymore, to be completely honest with you, and they'll just cut Justin Wilson. So this bullpen, when the injuries, I think kind of subside, will be good. And I don't think you or I, either of us, thought TJ Antone would look that bad. I mean, that was horrible. Truly, that was really bad. So I think there are maybe a couple things that are kind of unpredicted. I think that they did trust Buck Farmer because of the past years. Was he great? No. But was he absolutely serviceable? I think probably more serviceable than a lot of other bullpen guys. But again, losing that miles an hour off of his fastball, dude, that's just tough. So I'm going to give them a slight bit of credit. I'm going to try not to overreact to the first season. And I don't think you are either, to be clear. I think you're pointing out things that you have had a problem with for the last year plus. I think they're just kind of manifesting right now, to be fair to you. So once these injuries come back, I want to see what they actually look like. Because the last point I'll make is Nick Martinez is going to move to the bullpen when all is said and done. And I think he will make this bullpen immensely better as well. I think guys like Buck Farmer, if Antone doesn't get it together, and Wilson, I think those are your 3 first guys that you're cutting. And if you're getting Gibaut, Sam Moll, and Martinez or Santillan to be those next guys, I think your bullpen looks immensely better, because I trust that Sam Moll will look better. I trust that Ian Gibaut. I mean, you love Ian Gibaut. I like Ian Gibaut a lot. I think that he is a much better pitcher than what we like in the same situations we saw Buck Farmer and Fernando Cruz in. Those are the situations that Ian Gibaut ends up being in and probably doing a lot better. So I'm going to give them a little bit of credit. The depth is paying off right now, but we are thin in after this.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they get credit for they chose to do depth over star power with this year. And maybe it's fair because they think like, hey, it's too early to compete. But I'm seeing the flashbacks of all these years past where they don't go all in, where they could have made a deadline trade. And then we say the price tag is too high or whatever excuse we make for not doing it.
At some point, you just have to do it.
Right. And we're getting to a spot where, like, I think Hunter Green will still be an ace. But like you said, the question a lot of people are having are, do we just have 5 number 3 starters? And is that a bad thing? I don't know. Like, I would rather have a 1 who can go out and win you stuff. Right. So that's what I'm saying. Like, we could have had the star power there. We could have had, like, a star setup man, like, that we signed this offseason. We could have had a star bat, and, like, maybe that helps push you through different things. But I will give them credit. I think the depth was a very smart thing. I just think they're so close to getting to where they need to be. And it's just a matter of, if we get to the deadline and we're in contention, can we make that trade? Or this offseason, too. Upcoming offseason. Like, these young players grow. We get Marte back. Arroyo ends up coming back from his injury as another young guy. We have all these guys. Rece Hines already hit 2 home runs in AAA. It's just So it's like one of those things where can we go trade some of these guys to get more star power rather than just a bunch of guys who, again, have shown good promise but aren't star. We don't have a star on the team right now. We can say Ellie's like star power, but that's what I'm thinking about. Yeah. Is will we make that move when the time comes? They get credit for what they've done. Again, I gave their offseason a B. I just really to get an A to push us towards really contention. We needed that ace at the top of the rotation. We needed that extra bullpen piece. We needed one more bat who's really, really good. That being said, this team still has a lot of room to grow, not just this year, but over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I think that that's good and bad. And I won't belabor the point because I know we have to move on because, I mean, this is going to end up being an hour-long episode, and we just apologize for that now, but this is opening day stuff. We're getting a lot of it out of our system because I do think that, like, we still really, like, you made, I think, a really good, I'm not going to call it a rant, a very strong, I think, point in discussion about the lineup. And I do think that you and I need to have a back and forth on that one because I will tell you right now, it is criminal that Spencer Steer is batting where he's at. I'm just going to be honest with you. Like, I love that CES is batting 3, and I think that eventually he'll be able to get into it. But dude, if you want a guy who's going to be at the top of that lineup, who's going to give you a chance with guys on, it needs to be Spencer Steer. He needs to be in the 3 spot. If you're asking me, and if people are going to be like, oh, well, people were taking him less seriously because he was in the 7 hole, blah, 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 blah. Like, get the hell out of here. Spencer Steer is a good hitter. He's a balanced hitter. They talk about his balance. It's impressive. The pitches that he can get to are insane, and he takes the ball where it needs to go. I think, personally, not batting him in the top 3, I think is a crime. I think it needs to be very different. I'm actually loving Will Benson at 2, by the way. I didn't think I would like it. I'm really happy with him at 2. I think from now on, he probably has to be in the top 5. Maybe that guy at MLB Network knew what he was talking about. Maybe Will Benson is going to have his like breakout season. I don't know. I don't know. He still didn't play enough games for me last year for me to be like super confident in that. But like, I will just tell you right now, like, they need to put Steer up there. I think you move CES down just a little bit. And we do need to find a 4-hitter right now because Candelario does not look very good right now. His big home run was awesome. He also had a nice hit in Sunday's game as well. He'll come around. Obviously, these guys they'll have their fluctuations, but I do think that this lineup, if I'm being honest with you, I think it was egregious. I think of everything that was done over the weekend, that lineup is egregious. And if Espinal bats in the top 5 again, you are about to get. You think that Joe's rant was bad? Imagine him and I. We will get on a short together, and you're about to hear a 1-minute just absolute blasting because that is unacceptable. That is, I don't give a shit what any. I apologize. That'll be my last cuss word, but I do not care what any analytics say. Santiago Espinal was not going to even make the Blue Jays lineup. He may not even be on this team once Marte and McLean are healthy near the end of the season. There's a chance that he may not even be on, he'll be in AAA is what I mean. Not on the Reds, but in AAA, right? Like, he is a quadruple A player with the potential to be an okay major league player. He is not a starter, and batting him 5th, anything other than 8th or 9th for him is inexcusable to me. And if they do it again, oh my goodness, he better hit 2 home runs or I'm going to lose my mind. That dude has, I think, 13 home runs in his entire career. Something like that, maybe 18, somewhere around there. So I'm not okay with it. I'm fine with India. I'm cool with Benson. Maybe you move Fraley back into the 4 spot because I think they like that Candelario can stay 4, mostly just because he's a switch hitter with power. He still had a nice double. He had a big home run. I think he definitely has, but I don't want him to have that mindset. I was okay with it, but after watching this first series, I'm like, I'm not trying to, overreact to it, but just watching the way he was looking at pitches, the things he was swinging at, the fact that he's leading our team in strikeouts when he's not normally a big strikeout guy, like he is, but not to that extent. Like in 50% of your bats, that's bad. That's rough. He had a golden sombrero game, so you don't love to see that. So it's just, it's not great. They need to mix this up, and Spencer Steer needs to be in the top 5 for me. I think it's a crime that he's not.
I think things will change when injuries end if we get guys back.
True.
But the best teams in baseball I don't think pay attention to how like David Bell splits up the lineup, right? Like they are like talk about the Braves. They put all of their best hitters at the top of the lineup, just like traditional baseball is. Sometimes they like Acuna. Maybe you think is like more of a 3-hitter and he bats lead off. Like you could that's whatever. But
sure.
If the best hitters are at the top of the lineup, you get more at bats. So maybe we should go back to that analytics. So where your best hitters are at the top of the lineup, because I'm with you. Spencer Steer should be the 3-hitter. I think CES should be the 4-hitter.
Yep.
If you want to mix that up a little bit because of righty-lefty, that's fine. But when Matt McLain's healthy, he should be the leadoff in that scenario. Or if you want to keep India leadoff, then India 1, McLain 2. I think Elly should be the number 2 hitter if he figures it out. If you're saying, hey, he just hasn't figured it out yet, we don't want to risk having him number 2, then okay, put him 5. But that's to me, that's the crazy thing. You should have those guys hitting first. I do like what I've seen from Will Benson too, but like again, good start to the season. Let's see it more over a full season here.
Agreed.
That's the thing is like these good teams do that. They get their good players more at bats. And to me, that's what I would do. I'd have Matt McLain bat first. I'd have Elly, assuming he's figured it out a little bit, batting like 270. I'd have him batting second with that speed. You have the contact from McLain getting started off. Then you have Steer, who was your most consistent hitter that last year, like you said. You have CES, the power bat at 4. And then you can go to any number of, you can go to Candelario with the switch hitter. You can go to Fraley or Benson after that. That to me is what they should be doing. And again, I just think getting those guys more bats is more important than necessarily breaking up a lefty-righty all the time. Yeah, just to me, that's what you have to do.
It doesn't matter anymore. People can't, like, you get 3 at bats pretty much no matter, or 3 batters pretty much no matter what with a reliever. So you're gonna get a lefty guy who, as long as you break up the lefties a little bit, that's the only one. You need to break up the lefties a little bit. You can't have Benson and Fraley batting back to back, and Friedl, right? You can't just have all 3 of them batting back to back. I still think I'd rather, honestly, I think my lineup would probably be once Friedel's healthy, Friedl, McLain, personally. I really like Elly in the 5 or 6 hole. I think he does a great job, to be honest with you, but we won't dive too much into it. I think Joe and I would have a good time discussing that, honestly. But I will tell you that the one beautiful thing is once injuries, because you'll always have one. So even once you have the normal amount of injuries, instead of like, half your lineup, this lineup is so damn deep that I said I wouldn't swear anymore. Sorry. So freaking deep that it's scary. I mean, it really is, because I will tell you this much. They did hit this weekend. They did. They did not put up less than 6 runs, I think, right? Or was it 5? No, they didn't put up less than 6 runs in all 3 games. And they don't even have McLain, Marte, or Friedl yet. Right? Like that's a very solid line. And Candelario's not even hitting at all yet, and he's your big bat that you got off of the offseason, right? So it's like, this lineup is going to be gross. They're going to be really freaking good, and I will give David Bell a small bit of leeway he's got to figure out the lineup order. That's going to be fine. But if he's doing things like putting Steer at 7 and putting Espinal at 5 in any lineup, even though I know those were different lineups, that's the stuff that's unacceptable to me. The rest of it, you'll figure it out. You just got to kind of feel it out. Totally fine with that. But I'm telling you, when Espinal plays, if he's not batting 7th, 8th, or 9th, then we have a humongous issue. Humongous. And maybe they did it on accident. I mean, seriously, maybe he accidentally wrote Espinal in while he was... there are only bad words I can think of. But you know what I mean. It's not acceptable. Well, we'll move on, or unless you got one more point, then we have to.
Yeah. I'm excited you're cursing, buddy. I love it. It's just I think that's good for this tone of the podcast moving forward, because we have a lot of thoughts and emotions. And you're right. Like Espinal was definitely the thing that, like, it was bad overall, but that was the thing that kind of like piqued my interest of like, why are we doing that? I could see him like on an off day, maybe like one time on a Sunday where they're giving tons of guys off days, batting like 2nd or 1st if he's really on a tear contact wise. But 5th doesn't make sense. And you're right. It's got to be like one, like maybe number 2 in the order if it's like one of those off days, or it's got to be 7, 8, 9. It can't be the guy who's trying to drive in runs. It's not what he does. I just don't get that. So I'm with you on that. All due respect to Espinal. Again, tough defensive performance. He did get a hit in his start, so good for him. And I do want to say that I don't feel good about the decisions made, but at least we're 2-1. At least we're 2-1.
Hey, if this is as bad, because I mean, look, if they win 2 out of 3 every series, guys, which they won't, but if they do, just as a reminder, that's basically 110 wins a season. So we'll give that, and you're gonna lose games to bad teams. You're also gonna win against teams that are theoretically better than you, like when the Reds went out and spanked the Dodgers in the middle of June last year, right? So like there are things that are going to happen like that in baseball. That's why we play 162 games a season. Things average out more. We'll figure it out. Last thing here before we finally get into the discussion, I just want to point out, if you go and you look ahead, and this is why we're having these discussions now, April's not too bad until like the last week. And then we're going on West Coast trips. We're playing really good teams like the Diamondbacks, the Dodgers. We're playing the teams like the Phillies and the Braves again. Like I think it's the Braves, maybe not the Braves. Padres. I think it's like Padres and stuff like that, right? So like we're not really getting a break for all of May. And this team has got to figure it out pretty much through like there's a 4-week span where they've got a lot of West Coast teams. Are playing the Rangers, I think, as well during that point. So it's like, there are a lot of really good teams that they have to go play, and they have a weird schedule where they go out to the West Coast, come home, and then go back out to the West Coast. So it's like, if they can just kind of get through May with their head above water because they're doing the right things with their lineup and everything, June is going to be probably one of the easiest months I've seen unless if those teams just really figure it out that the Reds have had in a while. They're getting a ton of division games during that time period, which our division isn't very good. And by then, you'll also have Friedel back, most likely. You'll have most of your rotation back, and you should have your bullpen back. You'll still be missing McClain and Marte, but Marte will be coming right at the tail end of that as well. So it's like, you just got to get through these first 50 games, 40 to 50 games, and the Reds are going to be in a good position. So I wanted to bring that up because that's going to be something we're going to be watching and looking for, as we move forward. This Philly series is also the hardest series probably for the next 2 or 3 weeks. So really want to see them capitalize on that. Do you have any thoughts on that before we move on?
No, it just makes every series now important, and I do think that all Reds fans have dreaded West Coast trips over the years just based on how we played. So it'll be nice that we have 2 back-to-back, and we probably don't have to. I haven't checked the whole schedule. We don't have to go back, so that'll be nice that it's over in May.
Yeah, and it's just survive that. I mean, I'm not kidding. I'm talking 4-6, 3-7 surviving. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I will give this team credit. This young team actually did play well on the West Coast last year from what I remember. So maybe it won't matter as much. Maybe they're just really resilient, but we'll have to see. We move on finally. Phillies. We're heading to Phillies, three games away. We've got Monday, 6:40. Andrew Abbott getting his first start of the season. Let's go. Pretty pumped about that. Versus Christopher Sanchez. Tuesday, 6:40. Graham Ashcraft versus Spencer Turnbull. Wednesday at 1:05. Again, yes, a midday Wednesday game. Keep that in mind. Frankie Montas versus Zach Wheeler, perennial Cy Young candidate. They are coming in 1-2 after a rough series against the Braves. They got a very close win on Sunday. They realistically could have and probably should have been 0-3. Their pitching did not look great. The Phillies were striking out a ton during that series. And their bullpen may actually be worse than our current bullpen, not our future bullpen, hopefully, but our current bullpen, they did not look good either during the series. Aaron Nola got absolutely lit up in game 2. The Gregory Soto and I forget what something Alvarado, but they're back. Their back end of their bullpen's solid, but it's their middle relief that seems to really struggle. They got former friend Jeff Hoffman in there as well. This is an interesting series because the one thing I will say, Joe, is while we're both, I think, a little worried about this, we are getting Sanchez and Turnbull. Yes, we'll have to face Wheeler, but we get to dodge Nola. I don't care what anybody says. Nola's generally very good. He's going to have those games every once in a while, but only getting one of their big 2, I think, is definitely a big positive. And I will be honest, I think Abbott and Ashcraft, even on their average days, are better than Sanchez and Turnbull. So those are going to be your opportunities there, at least in my mind. What are you thinking about this series, Joe?
I think the matchups are favorable. This will test the depth of the rotation. We think it's a very deep rotation. These are the starts you have to win. If we can win a lot of the starts where our 4 and 5 guys are going, and again, I think Abbott is not a 4-starter, and that's we've talked about that before. But he should get the win to start. Hopefully, he gets warmed up for the season well. Ashcraft is just so mercurial that it's just tough to Is he going to be hot? Is he going to be not? Yeah. It's tough to say, but he has an average game for him in the middle. He should be fine. So I'm with you. I think it's good that we dodged their big starters because the rest of their pitching does leave a lot to be desired. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's just those guys with the lineup. I know you're going to run down here real quickly. Mm-hmm. It's about avoiding home runs with this lineup. There's not many good average hitters. They put Schwarber at number one spot for a reason. So I'll let you go over the lineup before the rest of it. But that's what it's all about for these guys.
It is, and it's because of the ballpark they play in as well. That right field porch is very short. Even left field, center field's pretty deep, but the corners are definitely a little bit shorter, and that's intentional. That's the way the Phillies. I mean, that was, the way that they've played for a while. Citizens Bank Park kind of does that, right? But generally, their lineup is going to look something like Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto, Alex Bohm, old friend Nick Castellanos, Bryson Stott, Whit Merrifield, and I think it's Jose Rojas. I can't remember for sure. But then you also had Edmund Sosa and Christian Pache, as their other two guys. This is it's a home run happy lineup. You just got to kind of pitch around Schwarber. He doesn't hit breaking balls well unless if they're, kind of being just left over the plate. He will not miss a bad pitch, though, most of the time. He will take you deep on bad pitches. The guys I think you really got to be looking out for because are Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, and JT Realmuto. Maybe Merrifield. I know he's kind of fallen off this last couple of years. This is a solid lineup. They are not a bad team whatsoever. I think from top to bottom, they're really good. I think that, but Rojas, Sosa, and Pache, whichever one you want to go with, those three, like once you get there though, like their bench is not exactly deep. And they do strike out a very large amount. So it's going to be about keeping the ball away from lefties. And I think, into righties, to be honest with you, you want to play that left field porch, I think, a little more than the right field porch. It's going to be, I think, imperative. Luckily, I do think the Abbott game is an important one because a lefty against Schwarber and Harper, I think, and Bohm specifically, I think that's pretty nice. He'll have to pitch around Turner, Realmuto, and Castellanos for sure. But I do think that it's a pretty advantageous matchup if Abbott's, healthy and he's throwing the way that we remember that he did last season. So definitely, I think an interesting series, one that could be like the Phillies could either be really good or just very average. Like we're gonna have to see. I don't think there's a world where they're terrible, but their pitching is not great. Their starting pitching depth is not fantastic. Spencer Turnbull was formerly a top prospect for the Detroit Tigers. It just kind of didn't really work out for him that way. The fact that he's a 5-starter now gives me some hope in both of those games. But do you have any other thoughts before we go into predictions on this one?
Yeah, just two, I think. One, the Phillies raised a banner for appearing in the NLS last year. So
did they us really? Reds,
yeah, so they're going from maybe being a good team to maybe falling back down to earth. If you're going to celebrate that stuff, just to note, that's just weird that they'd hang a banner for that. But the fact that we have Abbott as the 4, I think, probably was set up by David Bell in hindsight. I'll give him credit here. This is like I said, the lineup where you have to avoid home runs, but you're going up against Schwarber, you're going up against Harper, and yeah, like you got some right-handed bats there for sure. But for me, those are the two guys who can just wreck a game, right? Like with their home run power. So we have Abbott going. I think Brent Suter is going to be huge in this series. Yep. He's obviously could be a little bit overworked early in the season, but we do have that off day Thursday. But we get Sam Moll back later, so you can give him some time off later on. But there's going to be key points where we're like, okay, we're going to put a lefty in to face Schwarber and Harper, and in the middle, we might have to have Castellanos have to face a left-hander, which is scary in its own right. Yes. Don't get me wrong, but it's just one of those things where those lefties I think will be huge. Just something to watch out for there, because if there's going to be a point where Harper and Schwarber come on with bases loaded or two guys on, and they could have a chance to totally win a game, wreck a game for the Reds, whatever. That's what I'm watching for sure.
And to be honest with you, that's where you completely pitch around them. I'd rather give up 1 run than 3 or 4, right? Like that's just the way you have to play around it. I think it's going to be imperative for Abbott to get off to a good start. I want to see him get through those first 2 times through the lineup. If he gives up 1 run, then I think he's in a pretty good spot. 1 run or less, I should say. Even 2 runs or less, honestly, because Sanchez did have a pretty solid season last year. He wasn't bad or anything. I think his ERA was like around a 3.8. Turnbull is he's kind of like Ashcraft, honestly, where he's really strong or he's really not. So that'll definitely be an interesting one. Unfortunately, I am going to pick us to go 1-2 again in this one as well. This series is happening now, so I won't have a chance to change my mind, 3 days later, Joe. But I do think 1-2. I just think that Ashcraft is going to end up not having a bad game, but I just think that it's going to be a bit of a struggle in his, because I do think he'll give up a home run, potentially Schwarber and Harper, honestly. That may be the only damage he gives up, but I think it'll just be a little bit tougher for him to start the season like that. And then I think actually Wednesday we're going to get a pitcher's duel, and I just don't know that we win those right now. Not that Frankie's not great, but, I unless if he does what he did in that first start, which I think is not the outlier yet, but I think we haven't seen him pitch basically in 2 years. So we need to see it consistently. I'm not going to depend on that right now. I do think that Monday's game, though, I think we move to 3-1, hopefully. It'll be funny, though, because I'm sure we go 2-1 and Abbott just gets lit up. But, Ashcraft and Frankie are awesome. So, take my predictions with a grain of salt until I put them on shorts, I guess.
Yeah, I'm going 1-2 as well. I was going to say the same thing, which means they're not going to win that game with Abbott. I think that's the best matchup wise, and he obviously, like I said, he's just not a 4 pitcher after what he did last year. We'll see if he can keep that up for this year. But I thought, Ashcraft, I just can't trust him yet. Again, if he has an average game, they can win. If he starts off slow, probably not. And just Frankie, like I said, he had a good start against the Nationals. Let's see how he does against a lineup that is very dangerous.
Yeah, especially one with, again, Zach Wheeler being at the head of, with the pitching. I know it's different, but we'll move in. Last one here is going to be the Mets series. Now, we did have a discussion about this beforehand because I didn't know exactly what to put here, because we know we're going to get Hunter Green in that Friday game against Luis Severino. Severino got lit up in his start for the Mets against the Brewers, which is a very mediocre Brewers lineup, to be completely honest with you. I think compared to a lot of lineups that we're going to see this year. Even honestly, this compared to this Mets lineup. But 5 innings, 12 hits, 6 earned runs. He didn't walk anybody. He did have 6 strikeouts. You can generally say that that's just an early season start for him, but it's still really rough. But then we head into the Saturday-Sunday game. And the reason why I'm questioning this is because Nick Martinez is our 3 starter currently. Abbott will have had 5 days off, or had the appropriate amount of time off. Saturday would technically be his start without that extra day, since they don't play on Thursday. Friday's game is going to be at 6:40, by the way. Saturday's game, 4:10. Middle of the day, no surprise there. Against Tyler McGill. And then you have Sunday, Graham Ashcraft against Sean Manaea. At least that's how I have it right now. The way that changes is if it's Martinez, and then it would be Abbott in that game 3. The reason why this is a discussion is because Nick Lodolo is slated to come back on April 10th, which would technically be I think that would actually be Abbott's start if we continued in the way that we have been doing it, which I just don't think that they're going to skip an Abbott day necessarily more than they would move Martinez back to the bullpen, right? So we will have to see about that. Joe, I don't know how you feel about it, but I think it would make more sense for them to keep Abbott and Ashcraft on their, kind of regular schedule and just move Martinez back. If they need to give Martinez spot starts later in the season to give these guys a break, fine. That is what it is, but this is the beginning of the year. I'm not too worried about them taxing these guys too much. It's more about getting them warmed up than anything. And we know that Abbott and Ashcraft are going to be in the rotation over Martinez right now. That could change. Again, maybe one of them falls off and Martinez has to come in, but yeah, I mean, Lodolo's going to come back. They are going to start him when he is healthy. That's just the way it's going to go.
Yeah, so Hunter Green is slated to start on April 10th right now if they kept the rotation going. Abbott would start. Yeah, Abbott would start the Sunday game of the Mets series if this holds. But so I did a little bit of digging to kind of see what was going on with this, because there's no answers. But we go look at the Red schedule, on ESPN, and they show you the listed starter for like the next 2 weeks, right? Because they do like the rotations. Now they have Martinez starting April 6th game against the Mets. And then they have Abbott starting April 7th, which would be keeping the same pitching order. They could have changed that because for the Mets, they have Severino starting that first game against Hunter Green, just like we do. But after that, there's a blank spot in between Severino and then it's Manaea. So
yeah, okay.
I don't know. So maybe they know that McGill's not starting that one. I don't know. I don't know what the whole deal is there. Why that's blank? Maybe McGill's having some issues that we don't know about or something like that. But that's like maybe they're planning on, you know, changing that, but that's just where it is right now. It's like, hey, the Reds might keep their thing, and the Mets have something going on there. So the pitching, it's hard. I know Rob and I talked about it pre-show. It's hard to project pitching matchups as far ahead. We're doing one podcast a week. That's what we can do for now. If things grow, we can do more. We can maybe do like a one podcast per series or something like that. We could talk about that later in the season, pick up steam. But for now, it's I would say stick with what you got for this week, and then next week see what happens, because like you said, Rob, people are going to get injured. Something's going to happen. We could have, Nick Lodolo starting April 10th, and if be giving someone like an extra start off, we could have, any number of things happen. So I would just stick with it, with what you got. Even stick with Martinez starting and everything. I don't know. That's just what I would do. It's just too much up in the air with this team and the injuries and the suspensions this year to be like, oh, well, let's plan ahead and plan that way. Because I think if you start planning that way, it just things will change before you can actually do anything.
Things will go off the rail for sure. Like I said, we'll have to see. It was McGill and then Manaea on that Sunday game as well, 4:10. We'll have to see what happens. Like we said, you just never know. But right now, I'm personally going to put the projection out there. I would have it be Abbott on that Saturday and Ashcraft on that Sunday. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. Right now, the Mets are 0-3 against after a series against the Brewers. They will play 3 before our next podcast against the Tigers. A team that I think that they'll hopefully want to go in and take care of business against, but we'll have to see. They only scored 8 runs in their first 3 games, which is one of the lower amounts in baseball, I think. I'll have to go back and check before I say that for sure, but it seems pretty likely. I mean, we scored 8 runs in our very first game of the season, so... and they were at home as well. They were not even in Milwaukee, so not great. That ballpark is pretty big now, for the Mets, but that was rough for them. Their likely lineup is something like Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, the polar bear, I forget McNeil's first name, but McNeil, Sterling Marte, Francisco Alvarez, Brett Beatty, Tyrone Taylor, and Narvaez. God, it starts with an O.
It's Omar Narvaez and Jeff McNeil.
Thank you.
Jeff McNeil.
They also played Zach Short over Brett Beatty, which was really surprising in game 2. Old friend, brief friend, Harrison Bader, and then DJ Stewart was actually in their opening day lineup. The Mets are in a weird place. Like, they went all for it. Nothing ended up working out for them, and now, they're kind of back-ish, like, to being average. I don't know what they're trying to do. They have a new ownership group in there, so apparently things are kind of changing. I don't know how committed they are. It's going to sound weird, to winning this year. To be honest with you, I don't know that they're going all in. There's been even talks of them trading Pete Alonso at one point. So I'll be honest with you. There are 3 guys, maybe 4 in this lineup that I'm truly afraid of. It's Lindor, Alonso, McNeil, and Beatty. McNeil's not a big power guy, but he will put bat to ball pretty regularly. I think he's one of the lower strikeout starters in baseball. But the back end of this roster is, they have power, but not a whole lot else necessarily. We've seen Tyrone Taylor with the Brewers. Now he's with the Mets, so and then Short, Bader, and Stewart are not guys that necessarily really worry me. And I'll be honest, I think if our pitching is good, we're at home. I really don't see why we shouldn't win this series against the Mets. I'm not really afraid of this team. Maybe I should be more afraid of them, Joe, but they're not like one of the more intimidating lineups. Marte's been falling off. Alvarez is still really young. Beatty's still young. I think that Alvarez and Beatty will eventually be their 3-4 hitters in the future, but just right now they're still kind of figuring out, like a lot of our team, to be fair. But I feel like if you pitch around Pete Alonso specifically, while Lindor and McNeil can do damage, I feel like if you just don't give up the home run ball, which I think is a lot of what Joe and I are talking about right now, if you just don't give up the home run ball to Pete Alonso, then I think you're in a pretty good spot. But Joe, I don't know. What are you feeling with this?
Yeah, Frank the Tank Fleming, who is of the Barstool Sports universe, is a Mets fan. He said it is the worst Mets team he has ever seen in his life. So
I know that can't be true. I've seen some bad Mets teams.
Okay, well, Rob, this is the guy who goes nuts on the internet all the time, so he's having a good time.
I know,
but he's having fun with it. I'm probably not having fun with it. Actually, it's probably a better way to put that. But no, they had a rough start to the year. They had. I was counting on them to beat the Brewers, kind of give us leg up in the division to start, and they didn't do anything. Jeff McNeil and Rhys Hoskins got into a fight at second base because Rhys Hoskins overslid the bag, and Jeff McNeil was kind of, I guess, upset about how he slid over the bag, and that's the new rule. But at the same time, they said it was fine. So there was a lot going on for the Mets. They were losing games. People were nuts. People were getting upset. Now, the good news for the Reds, Rob, JD Martinez signed by the Mets, but he was sent down to the minor leagues to start the season. They can't bring him up until for the first 10 games of the year. That's how it's structured in the contract.
Right, I forgot about that.
So they're trying to win. I don't know if they can actually. I think they'll be an average team, right? I think it's what it'll end up being. But right. Martinez could be the thing that's oh shit, I'm gonna curse now, Rob. Oh shit, we have a lineup to deal with here because the dude still hits pretty well at the age of I think 36. So he's
You're right. That's really, I forgot about that signing.
Yeah, that's really key that we play them within the first 9 games of the season. So I think this should be a 2-1 series win. I think we should be able to avoid Pete Alonso. And honestly, he's not hitting. None of them are hitting well right now. All their big bats. There's guys batting below 100 right now. A lot of them. So Alonso's hitting 364, but the other guys are getting below 100. That's something to note. We're getting them at a good time based on what they could be. Severino had that rough start, so maybe we can get off to a good start to the series. I think this is a good time to get them. They're probably an average team, but a team that could beat us 2 out of 3 maybe if they had Martinez slotted in that lineup. But I'm going we win 2 out of 3.
Yeah, I'm going to say 2 out of 3 as well, and I wouldn't hate 3, honestly, because I don't. McGill, Severino, and Manaea are Manaea at his best was solid, but he hasn't been that for a while. Severino again at his best was solid. He hasn't been that in he almost didn't even get a job this year because he was really not great for the Yankees last year, if I remember correctly. It was either last year or the year before. But there were a lot of people who were I shouldn't have said not get a job. A high-profile job. I thought he may end up on a team like the A's, to be honest with you. That's how rough he has had it over the last few seasons. I'm not going to discount this team because I think that they have enough pop. They have enough potential, in this lineup to be good, but, they also don't necessarily have a great bullpen. They just don't have a lot of great stuff. The Martinez signing, JD definitely helps their lineup. There's no doubt about that. Like I said, I think this lineup on their best day can be dangerous, but they also have series, and it wouldn't surprise me if they have a lot of series where they're scoring 8 runs, right? They're a very, I think, streaky team for the most part, like you talked about. We're just going to have to hope that they hit the absolute crap out of the ball in Detroit, and then after that we'll just kind of see what happens. But I'm also going to pick a 2-1 for now. I'm hopeful for a 3-0. I would love it. We're at home as well. We'll be getting our first Friday night game of the year, which means we may see those City Connect jerseys, which would be awesome. Very hopeful for that as well. But I will say if this Reds team can find a way to be, what would that be, 4, 5? I guess it'd be 5-4 technically. That's not too bad to start out the season. I wouldn't hate 6-3 honestly, but 5-4, not too bad. Just stay over 500 until everybody kind of starts getting healthy, getting back. Because right after this series, we should start to see Lodolo coming back. We should see Jabot coming back, Mole coming back. Those are 3 really big arms, and if Farmer continues to struggle, Santillan right at that point. So. It's just there's a lot of big stuff coming up, and we're only going to be 3 series into the season, which is pretty cool. Reds, keeping things interesting, but that's all the stuff that I had. We do apologize. We went over pretty big time this episode, but we just thought that there was a lot really to go over, especially with the opening day stuff. Each of us had one rant. It was great. But Joe, you have anything else before we sign off here?
Yeah, I mean it was a long one, but I think it was needed for some of the rants. We'll do a better job of I think planning when we'll talk about certain things. This is still new to us, so we're getting all the kinks worked out now, and I think we can maybe keep it more on track with our rants being simultaneous and more conversational than just me going off for 5 minutes and then Rob going off for 5 minutes. I think that'll be something we're working on. We're just like the Reds. We're trying to improve every week, but no, it was a lot of things to talk about just based on the opening series, based on the upcoming series too. I probably will be a podcast. We said like 20 to 30 minutes was what we were going to try to do. I think we said in the first episode, but it might go a little bit long. It might go. We like talking baseball. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. The Reds are a young, exciting team. So just again, apologize for the longer one if people are hating it. If they like the longer ones, that's something we consider doing more often. Yeah. But it's just one of those things. We're getting better just as everyone else is.
Yeah. For all of you out there who are watching, we really do appreciate any feedback that you have as well. Joe and I love doing this. So anything that you feel like you'd like for us to talk about more, if you have questions about the Reds, things you want to let us know, especially if you're listening on like Spotify or something like that, take a second and go, even if you're not going to listen, go subscribe on the YouTube channel. We want to continue to grow this. If you want more episodes of this, honestly, the best way is to go subscribe on YouTube. Even if you're not going to watch on it, tell your friends and family. We want to create more content for the Reds. We feel like we have a lot of fun, and hopefully you guys do too. Make sure to remember the question of the day as well. Who was your MVP for the opening series? Let us know about that in the comments section below. We'll make sure to get to your guys' comments, as quickly as we can as well. We've already had a couple, I think, on the last, it may have just been a couple shorts, but we'll get to those here as well. So we really do appreciate you guys, and we look forward. Let's go Reds. Let's hope that they can come out, be 5-4 at least by the time that we get to this. Anything less than that, I think Joe and I may have another 5-minute rant each. So we'll keep you guys in the loop, but thanks, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.